In this video essay, I will be proposing a solution to the panpsychic problems and the panpsychic question: what is fundamental to reality? And if so, is there any place for psychism or mentality to be fundamental and present at the beginning of time? In order for it to be ubiquitous, I have the strong urge to state that it needs to be present at the beginning of at least our universe as far as we can know. In some ways, this will lead us in the first position to a form of metaphysics, since physics itself cannot go small enough, or literally small enough, or in that same instance back again to the first movement that started the universe. If you ask science, then the Big Bang is the first movement, but the causation that led to the Big Bang does not fall under the jurisdiction of regular physics, at least since the Wiener Kreis has declared that everything that cannot be experienced or seen should be neglected as non-scientific. I will start by showing a video I made especially for my children, which involves metaphysical but at the same time physical answer to the start of the universe. I'm stating it's metaphysical because the reasons I just gave. It's beyond the reach of science and of modern physics, but that does not, of course, mean it is metaphysical in the sense of out of the physical realm. I will show that the beginning of space-time is indeed a physical manifestation with the start of space and time and the start of causation, leaving in the middle the reality of causation. Is it like Kantian, more like something we put over the world like math, or is there actually causation in nature as a natural principle as well? I will come back to that question later. But first I will start with the question on how did the universe start? And this, of course, is closely related to my answer to the question: is panpsychism or mentality fundamental and or ubiquitous to our reality, to our world, to the universe we live in currently? For now, we'll start the video that I made for my children. The level of education and of course it's not as on the scientific level, but that does not mean the scientific underlayer isn't correct. It's only the form in which I explain this difficult matter that is aiming for a child in middle school or starting from 10 years old or something. Okay, and at some points I will stop the video and comment on what you have just seen and put it in the perspective of the essay and the panpsychic question that lies before us today. And then poof, something. Like our world and even all unseen worlds. Well, maybe it's time we start and fill in the blanks, cause it's quite a journey from nothing to now. Whatever nothing looks like. Well, you might think this is what nothing looks like, since pure darkness is the absence of all light, but it might just be a dark place which absorbs light, and then it's far from nothing. We have to get rid of the darkness too, in order to find complete nothingness. Let's get ourselves a bit smaller.
This white place I'm in here does not exist. You can think of it as fake, but needed to see what is happening. There aren't any real things yet, just a single spot of darkness surrounded by nothing. There's a strong connection between going back in time and getting ourselves smaller, since the start of the universe happened at the smallest possible point in space and time. The only force around here is slowly pressing the darkness, keeping something from escaping the nothingness. Yes, I understand this means we still have some force around, but magnetic pressure was the force that kept nothing from becoming something.
For now, I will be avoiding the question on whether our universe is in a series of multiple, not multiverses, of course, I don't believe in a multiverse, but a follow through of universes that will always start with a Big Bang and then expand at the speed of light until another limit is reached, which will eventually lead to a big crunch, and then like an exhaling and inhaling body, it will go back to its magnetic first state, and then the same thing will happen over and over again. Although I said I would not go into that, I'm not going into this because this is really metaphysics. This is metaphysics beyond our physics, because it is physics of a different universe, which could have been entirely different or somewhat different than our own universe. So, and also to answer the question of panpsychism, it is not needed to go into this too deeply, because the question is panpsychism fundamental to our universe and ubiquitous in our universe will do for today to answer that question. But yes, I needed to account for the physical reality that at the starting point of our universe there is a strong magnetic force. A strong magnetic force that will break down, and physics will later divide in 4 fundamental forces. But at the start there was only one force, a magnetic kind of pressure, and some might say the whole universe has a magnetic reality, a magnetic fundament. This is also needed for the next step, which I will go to now in the video, that the universe needed to create itself out of nothing. It needed to be self-movement, and the magnetic structure is important in that sense. The same way Thales already saw that magnets are able to in some way move themselves. And we know now, of course, this is a reaction to another magnet, but the first spot that I will come to, the first movement, the first the first beginning of the universe needed to be self-moving, also in order to solve the first mover problem that Aristotle already gave us. How is it possible that God created itself, or the universe moved itself? Because causation needs to start at some point, of course.
But at some point the pressing reaches a limit. Like digging in Minecraft always hits a roadblock, pressure can't go on forever. The world we live in has a limit. That limit is freakishly tiny, like way smaller than our best scientific machines can see directly. And this part, where our machines or eyes can't see anymore, is where real nothingness lives. And when we get there, at the beginning of space-time, this happened to the first of our kind. This space-time singularity I like to call Spot escapes the pressure and jumps as far as possible, which is about 0.32 centimeters, within 0.16th part of a second, making a little plank. At the top of its jump, it gets magnetically pulled back to the point it escaped from. Or to add in Einstein's formula, a tiny spark called m ignited with the speed of light and instantly got pulled back, sharing its energy at the speed of light again. This is the first move that is repeating itself every Planck second in everything that surrounds us, giving us time, which is basically moving space.
This is the most important underground for my essay today. The idea that the first movement, or the first spot as I would like to call it, the first ever start of a universe, is both material and, as I will try to see, also mental. There's also a mental component, a psychological component. Of course, for my point of view of panpsychism, I stand on the side of the more naturalistic part of the peer review group that states that we need to speak of a proto-psychism, pan-proto-psychism as at this point. Why is that? Well, the movement you have just seen of a little mass that has an energy wave right behind it. This is the first cause, the first M, which is actually a tiny magnet, invisible for our modern equipment, but it is a mass, it has mass. I would say it is also proto-matter, because it's not matter just yet. It is the pixel that will form matter and energy. But it's not just like the energy that flies behind it, that it creates as an effect, is not yet psychism or mentality. But it is my opinion that the combination of this matter and the energy it directly, instantly causes as an effect is the stable underground of our whole reality, and it's the same mechanism that is very much, of course, more complex, the system that will make our reality the reality by having like, for instance, the brain, which is also partly mass and partly energy. It is mass that makes energy movement possible. And it is in this energy, I believe, that panpsychism can find a fundamental proto-substance. Is it a substance? A proto-force. And the substance will be from the tiny mass which has magnetic powers, magnetic forces. And what is with this energy? Well, it is the energy that moves the train of thought. It is the energy that will help the mass be in a constant stream of movement. The pantarei, like a stream of thought, there is always an experience of the next word, the next sentence. It is always moving. But you also need the mass for a stable kind of thinking, a stable kind of living. So with this dynamic duo of energy and mass, we have the birth of something that has both a monistic and dualistic quality in itself. So my proposal, also to end the dualistic versus monistic debate, is the first movement is caused by a tiny mass. But this cause instantly leads to an energy wave behind it, as I will show you in the video as it continues. So there is an instant two-sided coin that will dominate us for the rest of this universal exploration.
I'll get back to that later. Let's look at the first movement again, knowing this is the result of graviton's overdose. God moved itself.
I'm shortly talking about God here, since the first movement or the first mover needed to be somewhat godly, and I'm using a graviton, which is a physical term, a power, a force that has not really been well documented, but it does exist, and I'm using the term because it has the magnetic gravitational forces associated with it. So, and I'm using the term overdose since there was like when a sun it has burned all its fuel, and then there's the supernova state. That's also an overdose that first starts before the supernova. And I think this is the same here with the start of the universe. Because of the big crunch, which probably was leading it before, there was so much pressure that at the Planck level, I hope you know the Planck energy, Planck time, Planck as a measurement instrument, or Planck as a length. At the Planck level, that is the smallest level that our universe can get. So there is a limit to our universe, and it is at that limit that magnetic forces can push on further, and this is why there's a counter reaction in the form of one tiny mass, and that mass, as I will show you now, will set the whole universe on fire again, because at the end of its jump it's igniting the tiny mass next to it.
And since every spot ignited in complete nothingness, it not only energizes itself according to the famous formula that makes matter and energy the same thing.
In the Dutch translation of this video, I state that the idea that mass and energy are the same thing is something that you will read a lot when you study Einstein's relativity theory, and of course this A is mc squared seems to suggest that there's of course a strong connection, but it's the same connection that I'm stating, that mass and energy are cause and effect, but they are not the same thing. Mass and energy are not the same thing. A is mc squared can also be seen like energy is being affected by a mass that moves up and down at the speed of light. And up and down is because it gets pushed off, but it has a magnetic origin. Our world has a magnetic origin. Yes, talking about the intrinsic nature of matter instead of the how that is studied in physics. You know what I'm talking about. The intrinsic nature of matter is a magnetic one. I don't know why. Does that mean does that make us more computerized? I don't know. Of course, we store things on our computer using magnets, but that conclusion is too simplistic. But that does not mean that we should not account for that. Does that mean our psyche is based on magnetic force? No, it does not, because the energy it creates that's more of an electrical force. It's not a magnetic force. The whole universe in total is magno-electric. It is caused by one very precise movement at the speed of sound, at the speed of light, which it is widely used as Planck measures in physics. And it is because of this stable first move that is the basic pixel of our reality that we live in a very stable supercomputer kind of world. But instead of a supercomputer, there's no matrix running over it. It's just this is what you get when you let this kind of system run for 13.8 billion of years.
But it also ignites the spot next to it into more light, doubling the universe energy in Planck time. Every spot hits a neighbor, starting the exponential doubling of the universe. Look! This is how something overcomes nothing, heating the rapidly growing universe in less than a second. The first space was burning too small to see, but not for long. About 10 millionth of a second later, the universe is the size of 10 zillion of spots, the size of a golf ball.
A small talk about inflation. There's a lot of debate of whether the universe is inflational, or at least we saw the inflation is actually just the exponential growth of this first part becoming 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 464, and every step I'm mentioning now is happening in Planck's time, which is 16 zeros, for starting from the point of 0.00. So this happened so fast that the doubling continues, and it will seem like there's some sort of inflation, but it's just exponential growth coming into effect. But the size of the universe, the small universe, they can only progress with the speed of light, which is incredibly fast for us, but it's not as fast as an exponentially doubling universe in the palm of your hand. So this is the cause of the Big Bang, of the explosion, a universe wanting to burst out, but being confined in a too small space, hence the pressure again.
Inside, the first part and his close friends are shaking under pressure, making them as hard as it ultimately can in our universe, which eventually will lead to some sort of giant explosion. But wait, I'm not saying we're on a computer, but like our friend Mario, these are the pixels of a superforce strong enough to make our world a reality. I know, still a long way to go from this magnoelectric Planck lengths pushed away towards something and pulled back into nothing, to them forming our world with elephants and buildings and all you kids seeing this video. But please remember, this is the beginning of everything around you. The Lego that makes for incredible life forms when it gets a little bit more complex. Now what about the Big Bang? Where's the explosion? I thought it was an adventure, Dad, I hear you say. Again, the universe didn't start with a Big Bang. It started out just as one spot, doubling itself quickly in the surrounding nothing. When these spots are pulled together, since they are still magnetic, as is the world around us, they are still vibrating so fast that they need to get out, but they can't. A cloud of them escapes the attraction of the ball, and smoke means fire. Just like a supernova stars explode under tremendous pressure after its life is over, the first universe burst open into the nothingness. The explosion was so huge that you can still see the heat from that explosion today. Unfortunately, all the spots inside couldn't fly that far into the universe since it wasn't big enough to fit them all. So for a long time, a vast and opaque clutter of very hot spots was waiting for the spots at the edge of the universe to make enough room for them to move around. And this process continues today at the very edges of the universe, where new spots are being ignited every time, expanding the universe beyond the nothing outside it. When the universe is 3 minutes old, some basic forms of matter known to us humans come into being. These early particles pop in and out of existence like soap bubbles, not because of antimatter killing them, as modern scientists believe, but because of a lack of structure underneath.
I make quite the claim here that the current theory of antimatter being something that opposes matter, and in some way 1001 parts of matter somehow outlived. For me, this theory is so outdated and unneeded that I will just spend a short time refuting it. If you just have the story I've been telling you now. This first part is still igniting the world around it, so matter is already present. If you ask modern science now, since the Wiener Kreis has refuted again, as I've stated before, everything you can see, the idea is that at the beginning there was only energy. And then you will have the same emergence problem. How did, or no, is this more like the combination problem? Yes. How did energy come up with matter at some point, or at the same? And of course, this is a very difficult question to answer. But it's not difficult if matter and energy are both present. Matter is just invisible to every scientific machine, but that does not mean it's not there. So matter and energy are present at this part, and there's no need for antimatter that's never mind. I sometimes got a little bit annoyed because I'm trying to set a new paradigm, and that is really hard because everyone I talk to will have to think out of the box, and sometimes a little bit too much. But I have a good feeling you can do that, Mr. Goff.
Since there was no stable underground of hydrogen yet, or even smaller particles, this process stops after about 17 minutes.
Yep. Yes. So the scientists needed to explain something they have witnessed, that there's a small point at which some forms of matter, real matter that is present in a world, starts to exist in that world, but then it stops existing. They say it's antimatter, but it's not. It is because the universe in the Big Bang is heated tremendously, the highest amount of energy and the highest amount of movement possible and the highest amount of heat and everything. But when it slowly cools down, as you might know, we are in the spectrum, a small spectrum of the universe that has the ability to create life. And this is the heated version, and this is the coldest version at absolute zero. And this is like a crazy amount of energy and heat. So after the universe of spots all ignited each other, the universe was at the highest energy state. But when the universe was expanded and there were no suns to keep the heat going, the frequency, the movement slowly started to go down. So there was this short period. So in this period, this is the place where small atoms do exist. Maybe some quarks, maybe some But that is just because that is the combination that is stable at that frequency. But there's no heat. They don't have a stable underground yet to be more than soap bubbles popping when the energy is running out. So after that period of only 17 minutes, the scientists say that it's antimatter killing this period, but it's not. It's just that they don't have a stable underground just yet. Both in matter, both in psyche. The energy isn't sufficient and the matter has not been layered enough. It's basically the same problem. They have the same problem. How does matter find all these layers within themselves to be able to have a mental layer within or on top of it? And the combination problem, of course, the same. How is mentality going to be layered enough? But it is, since I have taken the dualistic viewpoint, like in a Spinozistic way, to making them one at the same coin, a more monistic approach, we will see that they will both go through an evolutionary process, starting from the coldest point and then building itself up from that point So there will be a vast and strong layers of matter and energy below it. So our world can go back to this point and be more stable. Just to solve one another problem, I'm not going to make too big. This is also where dark matter is. Because we've already said we cannot acknowledge the matter we cannot see, but there's a long range of matter starting from absolute zero to the point that they can form large enough quarks, electrons, and some more visible to our machine. But there's mass below that in numerous layers. Yeah. Our universe is an endless combination of layers. It's not the turtles going all the way down, but it's toroidal all the way down or toroidal all the way up. It's balls, electric balls, magnoelectric balls building up on each other. I hope you still follow my lead.
Since there was no stable underground of hydrogen yet, or even smaller particles, this process stops after about 17 minutes. No stars are formed yet, it's just that plasma from the Big Bang being confined in a too small area of the early universe. It would take 380,000 years for the magnoelectric spots that are expanding the universe to make enough room for the boiling tsunami of energy to spread itself more smoothly around space. So finally, the dark ages of the universe, when it was so full of cosmic radiation that no light came out, ended. The magnetic soup had enough room to spread out and became a more transparent, cooled network of slowly moving spots. The temperature of outer space, without stars heating it up, cooled down to its minimum. Please note that there's a limit to temperature. And at this freezing point, the strings of energy can finally start building our universe from the ground up, getting themselves in a state of fluidity, in which it is easier to form all sorts of water-like bonds.
What you have just seen now is a form of superfluidity, which is another state of matter and energy that is reached at the lowest point. At some point, just before the freezing of, for example, hydrogen, and it has strange properties to be able to crawl over everything it confines and such things. But this state of superfluidity is reached only after the spots of matter and energy, of mass and strings has reached almost absolute zero. And at this point they start to recombine. They make either massive strings, as you've seen, or they make triangles. And why triangles, I don't know if I've said this before, but triangles I've learned from computer science, and I've also studied quantum mechanics for quite some time. In computer science, all three-dimensional worlds are made out of vectors, and vectors are the connections between lines that make up triangles. With triangles you can remake or build every possible 3D object. Yes, so I'm not saying that this table is made out of triangles directly. No, I'm saying this table is made out of balls that are made out of triangles, that are made out of singular spots that go up and down. So in the basic, it's just one linear reality becoming flat two-dimensional triangles, which become maybe some sort of pyramids, or they skip that step and go directly through to the balls, the magnoelectric balls. And I will show you in the next part of the video why the balls.
Why they form bonds? Well, the cold slowed down their vibration, allowing M and his friends to finally hold each other tight. That's what you do when it gets cold outside. Attach one spot to another with a magnetic force, just like you see here. Combined with others, it can either form massive strings in one direction, but no matter will warm up when your friends are so far apart. That's what you do to put out a fire, not trying to get the universe heated again. They needed a new strategy, or actually the universe did, and it did so by triangle and error. I know, bad part. But yes, the universe of possibilities discovers to form triangles, first made out of a few spots stacked upon each other, connecting in the cutest little triangles you have ever seen. This happens all the time in nature, triangles of 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen shaping the forms of water, 2 triangles forming 6. But why triangles? Well, the energy doesn't get lost, it goes triangular. And with triangles you can eventually build every possible 3-dimensional surface you want. From triangles to squares? No problem. From triangles to circles? Easy. And eventually to spheres, orbs. I love my balls. The more triangles used, the smoother the surface will get. This, my young friends, is the beginning of the stable existence that will rule us all. The balls of God. Oh, sorry, that came out wrong.
So, since we are talking about panpsychism, and also there's a rather direct connection to pantheism, I'm not defending a pantheistic situation today, but I am talking about the spot being some sort of godly particle which moves itself, and I'm talking here about the balls of God, just to wink a little bit at my kids. But there's, of course, these are the ground layers that make up our reality every day. So these are important steps of making our universe, and a way to for panpsychic problems, to give solutions to the combination problem, because this energy is built up and from the smallest possible level, and you will see that the combination problem is the opposite, or I think even the same as the emergent problem for a materialistic point of view. And the answer for both of them is in some sort of genetic evolutionary solution, that it is a vast amount of layer that will later give way to a complexity that shapes the enormous matter that surrounds us, and that shapes the mentality that also lies within at least ourselves as humans, but as I will try to proclaim, lies in some sort of level in everything in reality. I am today defending a panpsychistic theory, but I have to conclude that we need to talk about proto-psychism as the only possible way to keep the psychism alive in that phase of the universe.
These magnoelectric balls have 3 advantages. First of all, energy can grow and be passed on to others, and they can stick together easily, just like soap bubbles last longer when they form bonds. Secondly, the outer layer of the ball shields the inside. This makes way for transformation inside the balls by having slightly different temperatures, and thus slightly different substances. Third but not least, the magnoelectric balls will transform into the 2 sides of nature we see today, just by dividing itself into a magnetic positive ball accompanied by an electric negative ball that dances around it in a circular motion. It is still the same movement as the first spot did, the magnetic core pushing away its electric fan and pulling it back to the point they almost meet, pushing it back out just in time. But now we have 2 balls instead of 1 spot dancing in a magnoelectric field.
So this is an important step, and which takes me to the second layer of the proto-psychism phase, because the universe has seen a way to divide itself into a protonic basic system in the middle, and the electron that's spinning around it. as I've said in the video, it's still the same movement, but there's a division because now we have two. We have a material and also proto-psychic proton in the middle, which still attracts the electron that goes around it. And the electron is, there's also a division in function here that will grow out to be the division of function in all living things, namely the electron being the outer layer, always sensing the world around it. It is the outer layer that comes in connection with, like for instance the hydrogen atom. It likes to bond up with another for more protection and more stability. But we have the same thing in our human understanding. This is the electron part for our humans. It's the brain which has all the senses connected to it. It gets all the information from the surrounding, from the things we feel, from the things we see, from the things we smell, we hear, and of course our whole body and pain and all the senses. We are water creatures in some way. We are the hydrogen atom, but in a very, very, very much more complex way. But this is where the electron gets cut loose from the proton and will begin to have its own mental, namely sensatory, it does not have the meta yet that it can overthink or overfeel or over experience its own, but it has the ability to experience the world around it, and, which is very important, push that information through to the proton, which is still at the center. I will explain later why this will form all living creatures and also plants.
We arrived at the first hydrogen, at the in-between level to our world and the one of perfect symmetry. Didn't go overnight, took a couple of 100 million years. That is because of the vast number of layers necessary to become a universe we can actually witness.
So as you can see here on the left, the hydrogen atom has been created. A water molecule is created when two hydrogen are combined with oxygen, and it's only somewhat smaller, 280 picometers compared to the hydrogen atom. Is there mentality in all of these things? Yes, there is proto-mentality in all of these. These balls are connected in the core, but there's a constant movement, there's a constant pantarij, and or as Thales would say, that which moves itself is only present at every point in, but it's still in the proto phase because it does not have the meta level which us humans have.
Every level is a small upgrade to the previous but similar universe. After about 250 million years, the universe is mostly made up of liquid or gassy hydrogen.
This is not an ocean of flowing water, but instead an ocean of hydrogen.
It's still vibrating because of the energy strings inside. And also important, the H atom doesn't like to be alone.
On the second level of the proto level, the hydrogen atom will start to form massive pillars, like the pillars of creation we just saw, and at these high pressure zones, the H atom, the protons are squashed into each other, so it makes a double proton, which also has a double electron around it, and these helium atoms will combine and start the life of suns. I explain it in more detail in this video, but it's not that relevant for the question of today. Is mentality fundamental and ubiquitous?
It is unsure when life first appears, especially since we haven't decided on a definition for what life is. Do we mean chemical life or biological life? All biological life has chemical life in it, and even smaller, magnoelectric balls forming the chemicals in every biological body.
In order to explain the combination problem and the emergent problem, to give an answer to that, we know that our universe is made out of layers. And yes, we call biological life real life or something like that. But of course, the chemicals below that are in some way living. They are reacting with and interacting with the world, so they are in some way living as well. And that also goes for the self-moving particles and the strings of matter and energy that I call the spot that is in every chemical. There is a mentality in plants, and I believe there's also some sort of semi or semi-proto-mentality in H2O. If you could explain there's a mentality in water, then you would solve a lot of the issues, because the H2O, as we have seen, is also a phase which hydrogen goes through in the superfluidity at a very cold level. So if you would explain that water has some sort of mentality, then the hydrogen phase of the superfluidity phase of hydrogen could also have a mentality in it, and then you would have mentality at a very, very small level of reality already, it being a proto-mentality or not. I prefer to call it proto-mentality or proto-conscience. Especially if you use the word conscious, I'm not very keen on using the word consciousness in a too early state, because consciousness, in my opinion, means knowing there is. It is a translation of bewustzijn, like the Dutch, German-inspired idea of knowing. Sein, knowing to be. Yes, and of course, what are you knowing is knowing you are there is a form of self-consciousness, and there is, of course, a proclamation of knowing that the universe is around you. You are living in a world, but really. The kind of consciousness we live here as humans, there's also an awareness level which makes it some sort of meta consciousness. So I don't think you should use the word consciousness too easy. I think psyche is or mentality is better. Yes.
But at some point we decide it's more than just chemical life. This complex life comes from either the combination of elements on planets like we all are, or from the combination of stars and galaxies in the universe.
In this part of the video, I attempt to make a small suggestion for the cosmological panpsychic idea of there being a larger entity which has some sort of mind or brain or conscience. Modern science is seeing that the universe is somehow connected through a gigantic web, with thicker and less fixed states. My spot theory also suggests that there is no empty space. Even in between solar systems, there is, of course, a vast amount of nothingness, seemingly nothingness, but this nothingness isn't seamless, it's just so called that it is filled with, the strings are everywhere. So it could very well be possible that there is some sort of cosmological, I called it the god, like the grand overlord deity that uses the universe as a gigantic brain. I postulate this, of course, because this is not to be known.
The second god in our story arises from the latter, the combination of stars and galaxies in the universe. While there may just be, although we don't see, a greater overlord deity that makes use of the enormous amount of energy, does the bigger universe think?
use its stars and planets and nebula as a gigantic brain, where a web of some sort creates consciousness ungrabbable for little water creatures like ourselves? It's got a computer. It's got a computer. In my videos for the kids, I continue in Dutch, so it won't be that helpful from now on. But the question if God is some sort of computer, well, I think this needs to be addressed a little bit. No, it's not a computer in the sense that we have a computer like or like Mario is playing on a computer. The Mario Nintendo games are another layer on our layer, and our layer has more substance, as you all know, substance like flesh and blood and all of that. But in another way, it is a computer where the pixels are made up of those tiny spots at Planck level, combining to form the reality we see now around us every day. Of course, we know it will take a long time before the first fish with vertebrae will start to live. But I would like to show you a picture of them, because as you can see here at 27 minutes, they are lengthy creatures, and you see them moving like this, and you see how they are in a sense still the hydrogen, proton and the electron. But the electron, these are the first fish with a connection in some sort of spinal cord. It looks like at some point there the connection between the electron and the proton has been layered by spinal cord, because the interaction, it makes the interaction faster, and it gives the proton more control over the sensory the part of the creature. So now we have an animal which is powered by a proton. In humans, it is the area around our belly. We are learning just now in science that this has very intelligent powers as well. We know the belly thinks, like that sounds strange, but you know what I mean. The belly can give energy. The belly has the most important features of our humans, namely our balls, which have our reproduction cells and sperm, and for females this zone encompasses the eggs. It also has the digestion system and the food system, because this is our energy part, which gives energy to the electron. Here we are. Yes, and these are also sensory lengthenings of the electron. I can feel, I can touch the world with this. I don't even need my eyes to explore the world. So in some sense, the hydrogen atom has evolved to us water creatures, H2O atoms walking this earth, still needing the oxygen, still needing the water every day. We are water creatures coming alive, and in that way we are the semi-psychism figures that came alive and became mental because of still the same combination of matter and energy. The electron in our head slowly evolved from the tiniest brain in the first dinosaurs and reptiles that roamed the earth, that were still the center, a huge plant eater surrounding it, and a tiny sensory brain in the top of the head, which is it's still looking around. It's still doing the same thing as the electron, who's scanning, where the electron was scanning for other electrons to bond maybe, or to bring back the heat, to anxiously seek heat. The electrons in our brain anxiously try to avoid enemies and try to find food and try to find mates. And this has been going on for millions and millions and millions and millions of years. If you'd like to call that mentality, I totally agree. There is a mentality of the senses wanting to experience and wanting to live. And also we've created a mentality where the consciousness isn't just directed to the outside world, but a consciousness which is always, of course, directed to something, is also directed to an inner state of mind, to the feeling of the food coming in, and the feeling of course, the senses, the proton here, which warns you if there's danger. It gives you butterflies when you fall in love. It gives you enthusiasm. It gives you power. Yes, it gives you, how do I explain it in correct, proper English? Excitement. Excitement. Where is it? Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's scary. Crawl back. Yeah. And this is the start of the mentality which all creatures have, and which as humans have evolved to excitement in much more meta levels, or technology, art, and other fruitful and scientific endeavors. But yeah, we all know we still do this to impress the girls. Yeah. So let's not leave that part out of it. I've talked about the intrinsic nature of matter, which is a magnetic power. I don't know why the universe is magnetic at its core, but yeah, if you wanted to know what the universe is made of, then it's made of a giant magnet. Of course, we have Chalmers' heart problem. Why should physical processing give rise to a rich inner life at all? Well, the why question, of course, is a little bit difficult. But for some reason, it seems like the universe is eager to know itself. Because a rich inner life means more sensory data about the world, which gives more advantages to stay alive, to reproduce, to have food. So it's basically an evolutionary explanation here. Stay alive, to be there, which is one of the basic features of every life form. How this is possible? It's because if you build it real slow, it's not that the universe wants it, but it's an endpoint that it's given at some point, because at some point the universe allows for water creatures that not only interact and experience the universe, but they become a cause in itself. Although we have limited causal power, we can start new things, we can be a cause, we can reflect and pause, and we can stop certain causations in ourselves and in the world, and we can start new ones. In my opinion, it's more a Spinozistic kind of monism that has a dualistic outcome, but the monistic part not being a godly substance, but that one spot which has matter and energy in it at the same time. And it is my wish that a monistic and dualistic, a materialistic and idealistic, or materialistic and mental interpretation of the world come together, because in the beginning, in the fundament, they are one. It's a small piece of matter which directly creates energy, and this is the combination of moving matter that will give way to the moving matter parts and the moving energy parts, and the connections which make up our mentality today. That is the kind of meta mentality which only a few creatures have, and maybe at the highest meta level a cosmological panpsychism is true. But today I have defended a panpsychism that goes back to the root and finds proto-psychism mentality at the beginning in the form of both mass and energy creating the world and giving way to movement, self-movement in the world around us.